Talking about today with you is Tansy Ragwort. So this plant is native to Eurasia and was first reported in North America in 1913, and it was likely brought over from Europe on trade ships via its use as supplemental ballast on ships. And then once they got here to pick up their goods or whatever they were shipping over, they then took all that Tansy Ragwort and then just threw it off their ship into the area they were docking. So that's likely how it got to the United States and North America. And conditions here in the Pacific Northwest are really perfect for Tansy ragwort conditions. It's is a really prime habitat for them. So Tansy ragwort is toxic. It contains these pure lizidine alkaloids that, when consumed, are metabolized in the liver, and they can cause progressive and irreversible liver damage. And something to note here too is that just eating Tansy ragwort once is not going to kill you. It essentially bioaccumulates, and the more you eat it, the more damage it's doing. And this is how it works too with the livestock as well. Interestingly, sheep are less affected to completely unaffected by this toxin, so they have been used in some applications as biocontrol for Tansy ragwort. Again, yeah, bioaccumulates in the liver. Death can occur with as little ingestion of anywhere from 3 to 7% of your body weight in Tansy ragwort ingestion. And then a kind of an interesting highlight here is that the Australian dairy industry estimated a loss of $4 million per year due to impacts from this plant of Tansy ragworts. And this plant can produce anywhere up to 150,000 seeds per year per plant. So it's a uh, pretty significant seeder. This is just highlighting the Tansy ragwort life cycle. So this plant is a biennial plant, and that just means that it has kind of two phases for its life cycle. So in the first phase, which happens during the first year of its life, it'll exist in this rosette stage, which you can see there. And then during the second year, it will then undergo bolting and flowering and development of seeds. And you can see it's got the really distinct rosette, kind of very almost kale-like, very leafy. It'll have those kind of purple stems at the base, and really distinct yellow flowers. And with the seeds, they kind of have those dandelion type seeds, so they are dispersed on the wind. So you need to be really careful, and it's really ill-advised to, pull tansy ragwort when it is in seed. You should be spreading those seeds around. So there's some really important timing and considerations for control when looking at tansy ragworts. Um, so once this plant starts flowering, it's the biological clock is really ticking in terms of control. So um, essentially, any plant that is sprayed with herbicide or even pulled mechanically with flowers will still produce seeds that can then be dispersed. So essentially, if you are pulling this plant, you need to make sure that you're destroying or appropriately excuse me, appropriately removing this plant. You're putting it in a bag and then taking it to an appropriate location to be dumped. Um, Reseeding with desired plants that are natives ideally is really great when you're utilizing methods that are disturbing the soil. And grasses can also help to outcompete those seedlings. So, if you have an area with a bunch of tansy and it's just kind of bare ground, you could consider, putting some grass in there or putting some native plants that can help to, um, outcompete that tansy. Specifically, perennial plants do really well since this is just a biennial plant. And you can see there highlighted at the bottom is showing you this Tansy ragwort life cycle. So you can see on the left of each of those images is the first year where it's in the rosette stage, and then the one on the right is showing you the second stage when it's going into the reproductive. So you can see from June to October, it's starting to produce those flowers. So that's the best time to um, really make sure that you prevent it from going to seed. Some mechanical and manual control techniques. So hand pulling works really well if it's already in flower. You don't want to spray this when it's in flower again because it'll still go to seed. So you really need to be hand pulling this or cutting off the flower heads and properly disposing of them. It's also easier to pull when the soil is moist. Again, you should be bagging up this. plants. Again, kind of similarly with the Scotch broom, you can burn it, but it's not really advised because it does have that toxin in there. So you're going to essentially be, um, um, you know, burning up that toxin, and then you could be potentially breathing it in. Um, so it just is best to, um, bag up these plants if you are hand pulling them. And if this plant isn't seed again, don't pull it. You could just be, I mean, you will be getting that plant and uh, but you will be also dispersing the seeds. You can also mow or cut this plant, but that produces kind of it forces the plant into like this perennial stage where it just is more long-lived and hardier. So it's not really advised. Hand pulling works really well. And then kind of similar thing with cutting as well. You can remove a lot of biomass this year, but then the next year it'll be more robust since you are cutting it. And then also just a little plug here. We have here at the county noxious weed control program, we have a dumpster that we get in the summer and fall each year, and residents of Grace Harbor County can stop by and drop off any tansy that they have. We also take some other noxious weeds as well, which is really a great program and should be utilized if you have some tansy on your property. In terms of chemical control for Tansy Ragwort, there's a couple different options. 2,4-D has best results when used in the spring or fall on seedlings and the rosettes. 2,4-D and dicamba can be applied to Tansy Ragwort at any time up to flowering and again in the fall. 2,4-D and triclopyr, this is commonly used as crossbow and it can be applied anytime up to flowering again. So picloram is an interesting one. This is the only herbicide that can be used even when the plant is flowering and as a pre-emergent. But this one, it is a restricted use herbicide, so it is incredibly difficult to get access to and also has lots of restrictions. So it's not really used at all. But this is the only herbicide that you can use um, when the plant is flowering to prevent seed production. Metsulfurin can also be used to tansy that's actively growing before flowering, and then also aminopyrrolid. You want to combine this one with the surfactant as well. It's typically used on the rosettes. It seems to be pretty effective with that. Right, moving on to biocontrol. So there's three species here, and they were first released in the 1960s, roughly. So the most iconic is the cinnabar moth. This is the most destructive to large infestations. Um, the Ragwort flea beetle. This one works best in lower density populations, so areas where there's not as much Tansy ragwort. It does really well here. And then there's also this ragwort seed head fly. This one's not as effective as the other two at controlling Tansy ragwort populations, but it does occupy areas where these other two species did not survive. So, if you have a large area with different, maybe stressors on these biocontrol species, utilizing all three of these could work really well to really actively manage a Tansy ragwort infestation. There's also some other species that are looked at in other countries outside of the US. These include the ragwort plume moth and the root boring moth. So these are being looked at as well in terms of biocontrol. All right, so that's all the species that I wanted to talk to you today about. I just want to kind of wrap up by talking about some of the different tools that we have in our tool belt. So first off, I wanted to mention early detection rapid response. This is also called EDRR. And essentially, using this method is really ideal for getting ahead of the invasion curve, which you can see here. So you can see that early on, once a plant is first introduced, this is the lowest area that's infested by the invasive plant. And also, it's going to be the cheapest to control it. And then you can see as time goes on, this becomes harder and harder. There's more area that's infested. So really getting an early jump on these invasive plants is the best control method. It's better than any type of control method that you can use, chemical, manual, mechanical. It's just yeah, getting ahead of this plant. So once you have used EDRR to identify your uh, invasive plants, you can then utilize something called an integrated pest management plan, or IPM. And this provides a really strong framework for uh, and will allow you to be successful in controlling different noxious weed species. It also allows you to be flexible and use different adaptations for different species, because as we saw with Tansy Ragwort, different species have different limitations and things we need to be mindful of. So this is a really great framework for targeting and coming up with a plan to actually uh, treat this noxious weed. So you've used EDRR to find your invasive, and then you are implementing an IPM. But if you are not following the timing and phenology of this noxious weed, you could be, doing everything right, but then you're not actually treating this invasive plant. So kind of like what we saw with Tansy ragwort, again, using that as an example. If you're spraying when this plant is in flower, you're not controlling the plant. So just understanding that timing and phenology plays a big part in controlling noxious weeds. You want to make sure that you're really researching to find the best timing. Kind of similarly to with the source sink relationships in knotweed. And then lastly, you can do all of those last three things, but if you just kind of treat an area once and say, oh, I did my control, the noxious weeds are gone now. That's not usually the case. Most noxious weeds take more than one treatment. Sometimes they can take multiple years. So stewardship is really important. You need to go back to the sites that you treated. You need to be checking in and monitoring for regrowth. So once you combine all four of those methods, that you get a really strong and sound invasive plant, noxious weed control plan. Lastly, I just wanted to plug the periwinkle reporting that we have going on. So I am the sponsor for periwinkle on the monitoring list, and I'm really interested in collecting data on this plant. So if you have seen any Vinca major or Vinca minor, I'd love to hear about it. You can scan this QR code, and that'll take you to the reporting form, which you can fill out. You can also send me an email there, and I will add your periwinkle reports to the data sets. Just if you do email me, include as much information as possible, roughly the size of the infestation, which species it is. GPS coordinates work really well. So yeah, I'd love to hear about any periwinkle observations in the state of Washington. Lastly, these are my sources. Alrighty. And that's all I have for you all. Thank you so much for your attention and time checking this out. Feel free to scan any of our QR codes there. You can send us an email if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day.